there, sweet friends, and welcome back. I hope you are all well. Today's project is inspired by the one that we created last week. And so I did make my own personal journal to document Halloween or October. And I relied on a vinyl wallet, a long arm stapler, and some elastics to create that journal. I wanted to offer up a solution if you didn't have any of those things. And so this is just a variation on that. We're going to create a sturdy cover, and then because it isn't vinyl, we can add some additional layering for the front, but it works very similarly to the one that we created last week, where we have some beautiful inserts created here, and that is what you would add your finishing details to. And so this could be used for documenting the season, or you could use it maybe to have some lists. If you want to have a holiday planner, that would be perfect as well. So there's lots of options on how you can use this, and there's lots of options on how you can make it. You could probably substitute really any collection for any theme that you wanted. And this was actually pretty easy to make. It didn't take a lot of supplies, and it was pretty fast. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. So the papers that I have here are from Hobby Lobby. This is the Paper Studio brand. This is a combination of the 12 by 12 single-sided sheets along with a beautiful foiled pattern. This is still single-sided, but it is much nicer and thicker, and so I think this is a beautiful festive combination. There's some geometrics, a large floral, and then something that's a little bit lighter, more neutral in the background. And so, as I mentioned, this was from Hobby Lobby. I shared this in the haul that I did for Christmas in July, so I would have picked this up in June, and I've had it since then. And now, just recently, our local town, not exactly where I live, but one town over, had a Hobby Lobby open. So I could have waited and just bought them last weekend, but that's pretty exciting. It was real busy. I didn't get to see all the things that I wanted to, but I was pretty excited to be able to wander the aisles much closer to home. So that's going to be our papers today. And so first we want to create a base. I'm going to start with 110 pound just because I do want this to be very thick and sturdy. Remember, those vinyl wallets here are what we had for that original project. And so we're going to skip that and work with just cardstock for our base. So this is going to be cut to be 6.5 high by 9.5 wide. And I'm going to score it at 4.5 and 5. And that is going to give me a finish size of 6.5 by 4.5. I need to incorporate some pockets on the side, and that's how we're going to attach our inserts, because we're not going to be using the elastics this time. And so I have brought in 65 pound weight cardstock. This is going to be cut to be 6.5 by 6.5. I'm scoring it at 2. So this will cover the full section here, and then this will become our pocket. So we do want to use our 2 glue combo for this. I do have one for each side, and we're going to get a spine of 1/2 inch, and that does seem like a lot when you first create the base, but believe me, those pages are going to get bulky really quickly once you start adding your finishing details. So make sure to leave enough room for that. So I'm just going to bring this to my base here, and I want to make sure that I have this folded up so that I can get this exactly where I need it positioned so that this is still going to operate properly. And I'll just lay that in right along that score, keeping it straight and even along the bottom and the side there. And for these, we do want the pockets to be on the outside so that when we add those inserts, they will help to hold them in. I think it will be easier to turn this around, fold up on that score line, and we'll just do that same process to adhere that. So now it would be the time that you want to finish the back of these before you seal up your pockets so that we can have these nicely finished on the inside. And so I have my cardstock cut to be 6 3/8 by 4 3/8, and the pattern paper is 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So we're gonna get a beautiful layer of the base along with the cardstock and then our pattern paper. And so this is actually pretty nice, sturdy cardstock as well. So every layer that we add is going to make it much sturdier and nicer and chunkier. And so I want to make sure to center this right along those score lines so that I have the proper spacing for my borders. And so let's just go ahead and do the other side as well. Even though this is a Christmas theme, I think you could picture this with any collection or theme that you want to work with. Just switch out the pattern papers. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and finish off the back too while we're at it. It'll be a little bit easier to do that before we got all the rest of that adhered. So let's just finish the back with the same measurements as the full-size pages on the inside. I should have got some Tombow when I was at Hobby Lobby. I get a pretty good deal on that from Amazon. And it was too crowded really to wander all the aisles, so I think that I'll just order it online. Okay, so that's going to be the back. Another thing I do recommend for these projects is to choose patterns that are non-directional. So in case you need to flip it around and get extra use out of the sheets, that would be definitely advisable. And so now we want to close up these pockets, and I'm going to stick with my Tombow just because I want to have this sealed, taking up as little room in the pocket as I can. I do have just a line of that over, and it will take a minute to hold this for that glue to set up, but we won't be able to rely on having the double-sided tape. But just be a little bit patient and have a good contact, a good pressure until you're confident that glue is set well. And then do the same for this side. Let's bring in a pattern to cover the front of that pocket. You see, adding all of these beautiful layers. And so I'm going to continue to use a overall pattern with a geometric just to keep things from looking busy. And so the measurement for the cardstock on this is going to be 6 3/8 by 1 7/8. And the pattern paper is 6 1/4 by 1 3/4. And center that. Anticipating a question that will come up, could we put more room in the spine so that we could have some additional layers or some additional inserts? I don't think I would, because I do want it to be very sturdy. And so if you needed more space for finishing details, you could create a second one of these. It was really easy and quick to put together, and doesn't really take too many supplies. So I would say count on having 2. That way you'll know that everything will have space and it will be very structurally sound. So now we can work on finishing that front cover. Let's just add a bit of our tape here so that we can wrap a little bit of trim. Want to make sure to have a good closure for this to keep all of those finishing details inside. So got a little bit of pretty stitched satin here from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and that just goes right here. And then let's just finish that with the same pattern we have on the back, but I just used some of my offcuts as a layering pattern. Be helpful to flatten that out and then get this front cover centered and attached. This is actually so thick now. This is pretty sturdy, and I want to create the inserts for this. So let me show you the finished one. In the original project, I did share these that were stapled with the long arm stapler, and then I used elastic to attach them to the cover. And so the option for not having to have elastic is to stitch them, and that was really very easy. I will show that in just a second, but I do want to say that I am confident this is going to be well secured because this is the thicker cardstock for the outside. I want to let that glue set up just a little bit longer while we wait to put these in, but in the meantime, let's create a second one for the other side. And so I have that lovely pattern with the foiling on, and this is going to be the cover to the insert, and I have this cut to be 5 3/4 by 8 1/2. So we need it to be a little bit shorter and a little bit narrower to fit well into our cover. And so I am also going to include these sheets that are just regular old printer paper. I cut them to be 5 3/4 high, and then I folded them. There are 5 total. It is tempting to do more, but trust me, they get bulky really quickly when you start adding your finishing details. You see, I just folded that in half. And so basically what I want to do is nestle this into where that score line is and make sure that everything is distributed nice and even. And then I will take a couple of these wooden clothespins and just stick that here to hold it in place. Make sure everything is nice and even. You definitely want to have some way to protect your surface, your work surface. And then I'm going to come in with this awl, and I'll just punch a couple of holes here. You only need 2 when you're stitching. So I want to put it right down into that score line with enough pressure to go through all of those layers. And honestly, every time I pick up this tool, I seem to injure myself with it. So I'm just going to be extra careful today so that we don't wind up having to run upstairs for a bandage. I do want to get through, see how it went through all those layers. And I'm going to use some quilting thread for this. And so this is just a little bit thicker, and then it has a more rough finish. So once you get your knot tied, it will stay well secured. So I'm just going to cut off a length of this. And then I'm also going to be using a large needle. You see I've got that doubled over pretty well. And I'll come in from the top, pull it till it's good and taut, clipping the excess here underneath my clothespin just to capture it. Pull that. Coming back through the other side. Then I'll just take one more pass so that I can have multiple layers of that thread. And I'll just tie a basic knot here. and then just remove the excess. And this knot will be captured in between these layers. So I am going to bring this now to my guillotine cutter and chop this off right on the edge. And you see this way, you're going to get a nice even edge here. So let's bring our cover back in. And we can add these. So you see how nice and tidy that is. Probably easier to do that than get things centered with the long arm stapler anyway. This is going to be snug. And you want that so that this will stay in place. And then repeat that for this side as well. And that is going to keep these inserts in place. And we can finish the front. So I am going to be adding, of course, my doily. Instead of one flower arrangement with additional embellishments, I'm going to add 2 of these a little bit larger flower arrangements. And so you see I only have a small amount of space for the focal image. And so I do want to position this on top of a tag that I just used a die to cut and put that on some spacers just to develop some dimension. And then from my scraps, I did have this very sweet little joy tag, and I thought that would be perfect to be layered on top. And so if you had maybe some cut-aparts that came with the collection, you could substitute that as well. But now you can see how when I add those details, it really is a nice full cover. I'm not going to be able to do that for my October journal because I have that vinyl wallet, and so nothing is really going to stick well to it. So I added a little bit of extra of that beautiful trim here to complete this floral arrangement. So let's just tie this up. Then clip the ends at an angle so it won't fray. So that's going to be it for our project today, and I sure do hope that you enjoyed this version. We were able to create something very similar, but without having to rely on the vinyl wallet or the long arm stapler or the elastic, and I think this will function just as well and be a little bit easier to achieve. So if you did enjoy it, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Check in the description for links, and as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!